first edition of the Sprint Car Unlimited Deep Dive presented by EnTrust IT Solutions. This is a new program on the SprintCarUnlimited.com YouTube channel, and it's going to run every Thursday at 7 p.m., and it's going to consist of an interview with a prominent figure in sprint car racing. Before we kick things off, don't forget to check out EnTrust IT Solutions. EnTrust is a full-service technology company serving small and medium business in York, Pennsylvania, and the surrounding areas. At EnTrust IT Solutions, the staff takes a personalized approach to technology. See why customers are choosing EnTrust as their technology partner by scheduling a free consultation at www.entrust-msp.com or calling 717-292-8868. On this week's show, we're going to have Brian Carter, CEO of the World Racing Group, somebody everybody knows, and we're going to talk all things sprint car racing, obviously Highlimmit, but we're also going to take a look at his history and how he became the CEO of the World Racing Group. Brian, thank you for joining us on the show. Again, appreciate it. You're the first guest on our deep dive program, and I know you're busy and it's storming down there. It's wet up here. It's cats and dogs. It's all going to pot.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be the first guest on the get to know the sprint car world. So it's an honor to be there and to be on the show with you. So yeah, it is storming. It's thunderstorm warning and a tornado warning now for south of here. So it's one of those days in North Carolina you don't usually get in January.
So. Yeah, no kidding. And I'm going to jump in because one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, I mean, obviously we're going to talk about racing things and what's going on in the racing world. But first, I want to get you on because I don't think a lot of people, especially new fans, know much about you. I think sometimes they think you kind of like the creature from the Black Lagoon. You came out of Lake Mead and took over the Outlaws, but that's actually not the case. You have a business and finance background. So before you kind of took over the CEO duties of the World of Outlaws and the World Racing Group, what was your background? What did you do before this all started?
Well, I'm what you'd call a financial architect. I spent 10 years with Deloitte doing public accounting. So I came up with a CPA license and had big clients and started off doing Chuck E. Cheese Pizza. Actually was one of my first clients, Showbiz and Chuck E. Cheese, and did their merger. Yeah, believe it or not, that was one of my, so I've been in the entertainment business from my finance side from the very beginning, but that was a long time ago back in Dallas, and evolved into what Deloitte would call a specialist in SEC reporting, and built a relationship with the SEC. So through my career, I helped my clients navigate the environment in the public, going public, raising money in the public environment. So it was a great learning experience. Got to work with companies like Bank of America and Ameresco and the old NCNB merger, and I got to work with companies like GE Capital. I got to work with Staubach Company in Dallas. I got to work with a lot of companies and Union Pacific Railroad back when they were dealing with some of their big crisis, but really became an engineer raising money. So some part of a team with the team raising company money for about $7.5 billion in my career for my clients. So I was an engineer, a financial architect by the time I was done with my career at Deloitte. And then we took a little software company public. One of my clients kind of joined the software company, and I joined them in as controller and VP of finance. And we took a company public with partners like Ernst & Young and Hewlett Packard, and in 1999, which seemed like a great idea at the time, and rode that out and made a little money and sold that in 2004. And ironically, some of the initially investors in World Racing Group, or Boundless at the time, were investors in the software company. So we're able to navigate that marketplace, sell in 2004, and it was right about the time all of this was happening with Boundless and the World Racing Group as it existed previously to World Racing Group. So it was kind of a crossover investors and investment bankers, and had a track history of raising money. And that's kind of how I got my history to get to here. So I'm really a financial architect, but they didn't know that I'd been a race fan since I could walk. So I've been going to Heart of Texas Speedway since 1974. My mom would tell you that I went to Manassas Speedway before I was born up in Virginia. So I grew up a race fan. The guys that we were doing all of the rest of this financing with had no idea that I was a race fan or even had been in a race car at that time. So kind of ironic parallel paths, kind of, this, when fate meets, it's like, it was an interesting dynamic that happened. So not usually do you get a financial architect or a financial, this kind of financial experience navigating the public market, which back in the day, in the early days of Boundless and Dirt Motorsports, that was ugly. So it was a fun fixing for me.
Well, and we're going to get into that because, how do you end up going from a financial architect to CEO of the World Racing Group? I know there was a lot, it was a struggle in that time, the Boundless years. Obviously, they went public, which I'm sure is another reason you got involved. So, how did you end up CEO? They didn't do did you draw the short straw, or how did that
Well,
work?
my first, yeah, I was involved started getting involved in late 2003 and heard some of this, the rumblings of this starting to happen. In 2004, I came on as a consultant. So when I came on in 2005, I was only the CFO. So I was really tasked with the task of cleaning up the financials, navigating where they were. They were already public. They'd already done a reverse merger into a public company. The cap structure was messed up. The investor group was unhappy, and things weren't going really the way that they wanted them to go. So I was really brought in to be the financial stabilizing and bridge the gap between what we were trying to do and really understanding, hey, a roll up in motorsports with all of these premier entities would really work. But would it work in a public environment? Well, the idea that had already happened. The problem was now you got to fix it and get it to the point where not only were you compliant, but could be compelling from an investor perspective to try to raise money. And that was really my task, was to clean it up so you could actually have a relationship with the SEC, compliant with your existing shareholders, and then attract new shareholders in 2004 and 5. And that was primary goal for me, was to get all that straightened out and then help raise money. And we did that quite well, actually, in 2004 and 5. And into 6 and 7, we raised about $45 million, all in the public arena, which is a really ugly place, especially when you get to 2008, when
The housing market.
When everything started burning down. The market was crazy, hitting up with a financial crisis. So now you're a public company, you're raising a lot of money, a lot of new investors, a lot of high expectations, and then you get whacked with 2008. I'm like, okay. Got a little bit past where I became CEO in November of 7, because we kind of got to this point where it was, okay, I raised all this money, my name's on the hook. How do we get this going? And along the way, we'd hired some great management team members with Tom Deary and Ben Geisler and Rob Butcher, and brought in some people that the industry knew and brought credibility while I'm trying to sort out the financial side of it. And then in 2007, we decided that I decided that in order for me to really move forward, I needed to have more control over the company itself, and especially since my name was on most of those financial documents. So I needed to take a little more ownership and control over this in 2007. So in 2007, I became officially the CEO and CFO of World Racing Group, and then everybody else stayed in their operating positions, and we started moving forward in 2007. So there's a lot going on. We just covered 3 or 4 calendar years and $45 million of raises and private equity and all the other pieces. And that just to get to me to the point where now my neck is on the line, not only for the financial side of it, but the operating side with all of the new investors. So it was an interesting timeline. And in the middle of all that, before you get to where it's, you're dealing with just the finance side of it, we had a split. So you had the NST starting up in NSL to start with, and in 2005, because I really hadn't got it all stabilized, nobody really knew what was happening. My face wasn't on it yet, and in the midst of all this, people had no confidence really at the time in World Racing Group or Dirt Motorsports at the time. So it was a challenging time frame for us, and not only managing the expectations of the industry, but managing the expectations of a whole bunch of new private equity shareholders that were getting their hat handed to them at most other places of their business. So it was an interesting dynamic in 2005 and six. And at seven, in order for me to continue, I needed to have more control over everything. And that's when I asked the board that I needed to step up my responsibilities, that they wanted me to be here long term. And I guess now in 2023, I guess we can call that long term. So
That's long term and a lot more stable now, I would say. So what were some, just if you could take a couple things, what were the biggest things in the last, 14, 15, 16 years that's taken it from it was a little bit of a mess. I remember those years. Jerry Regal and I kind of reported on that for the Patriot News back when that was all going on. What were the biggest things that maybe you implemented, or the business implemented, to really bring this to stability, and also to bring the World of Outlaws to what they are today, which is in a lot better place than then?
yeah, so that took a long time to get there, and it was really built on a foundation of trust and relationships with the industry. So you can't just come in overnight and wave a checkbook around and expect everybody to start following you. So it's taken, and it's still taking, is long-term relationships and building trust with your customers and your fans and knowing what to expect. So this isn't a process that has happened overnight. It really has taken 2 decades to get to that point where the confidence and really the trust that you have with your customers and your partners over time. So when you look back at it, the foundational pieces of just sticking to what we do and do it as best we can and doing it the right way for the right reasons just continues to pay off. So, along the way, one of the most important things at the time was, I like to say we beat NASCAR and Speedway Motorsports going private, because at the time we were losing bleeding money, and it was all being reported on a quarterly basis. You have all of the going concern things in there. So
Yep.
nobody had any idea if you're going to be here tomorrow or if the doors were going to shut. And there were some days, candidly, where, we were funding money, payroll out of your pocket, trying to figure out how to make this stuff work. And so we decided that when we were losing money, but when you start making money, people are going to start, well, now they're making $1, making too much. So we decided early on that public arena really wasn't the place for motorsports, at least in what we were trying to develop. So we started that process in 2008, just about the time the market crashed. It gave us an opportunity to go, you know what, we really should be in the public market. So we started going dark and started going private. So we beat NASCAR and ISC and Speedway Motorsports going private, because it really isn't the place for motorsports. So because people it bred uncertainty, and uncertainty creates lots of anxiety, and it turns excitement into anxiety pretty fast. So we've been just on a path to doing what we say we're going to do, and doing it in a way that we believe is best for everybody. And at the same time, growing from a 20-person company to an 85-person company, and growing from developing our own, all of the little pieces. But really, there's just several moments in time I recall very vividly about, we did something and we did it and it's paid dividends, decades in the past. And there's just an accumulation of those, but most of them are building relationships and things. When we decided to do something, we shook hands and we got it done. And it's mainly with our track partners and some of the racers, and just things along the way that you just look back at and smile. And that's why we're here. It's a long-term relationships and the trust that we have. I think the fans know what we are and what we're trying to do. And I think our racetrack partners do too. So that's really what this whole thing is about.
What are the biggest mistakes you made? If you can think one or two, some mistakes that, oh boy, I wish I wouldn't have done
Oh my God. There's a couple of big ones that people don't really know. May air some laundry here, but when we bought the Stacker 2 Extreme Series, it wasn't our responsibility to pay that point fund. That we got stuck at the end of that year, and we didn't pay that point fund. The Lucas Oil Series started. We paid it a month later,
right?
But we weren't responsible for that point fund. So, we don't hold grudges. We're not doing that stuff. We ended up paying it. It all got sorted out. But that was me going, that's not ours. The contract says something different. But that cost us a lot of money over the years. Is like, but there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that a contract said something differently, but it's sorted out. That's probably a pretty big mistake. And I apologize, because all the guys that we bought that from are good partners now. So, but it was one of those mistakes. Is like we probably should have paid it, and we then probably should have sorted it out behind the scenes. And but at the same time, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it cost me the Lucas Oil Late Model Series. I believe Earl Pearson and the guys took 30 days to get their point fund money, and that created a level of distrust. That's a pretty big mistake, and that's airing out some real laundry. People may not know now, almost 20 years later. That was probably a pretty big mistake. Let's see. That's a big one. It's hard to record that one. And let's see if I apologize. Maybe this would be a chance for you to pause and catch the video back up. But
Oh no, seeing, how I am. I like seeing people sweat a little bit.
no, it is not sweat. This is a recollection, because I really focus on all the positives. Made some, but you learn from your mistakes. If you don't learn from them, you repeat them. So that was a pretty good one. A couple of other pieces where I just probably didn't anticipate some of the things. We spent a lot of money on live TV. I wish I had some of that money back.
Yeah,
tens of millions probably over time, that I wish we had some of that back, and tried to advance the technology to get Dervision going faster. But at the time it seemed right. The partners kind of wanted it, but boy, if I had my druthers, I'd rather have some of that money back.
well, hindsight and something, and I'll let you off the hook because I get you later, but you've taken the pay-per-view, your pay-per-view model. You deserve a lot of credit with the World Racing Group of building your own, streaming, what's turned into streaming for the World Racing Group. It's all your product. You developed it, people at the World Racing Group. And you look at where the company is now compared to where it was when you started this deal, and you hear fans criticize or drivers criticize whatever it is you do, which seems to be, how that goes. Does it bother you a little bit? Does it grate on you a little bit because you know where it was and what it is now?
Yeah, I liken a lot of that to people just not understanding. So if they a healthy feedback loop is an important part of business. So let's not say I can't take criticism personally. I have to listen to it and make sure I understand it. But a lot of times where if people are criticizing without foundation, or if they're just taking shots at us, which we get taken shots at all the time, you have to ignore that stuff because it's not really productive. But a healthy criticism loop is an important part of growing a business. So I definitely recognize that. But it hurts, it's like, yeah, you should have seen this, it's like, oh my God, we're going through this strife. I've lost 4 employees. It's like, oh my God, you guys have no idea what real pain and suffering is from 2004 and 5 when you're dealing with Richard Petty in your pit area, and you're trying to recruit drivers, and you're dealing with payroll and the SEC reporting down your throat, and you're dealing with a sales tax lawsuit in New York because of stuff with Glenn Donnelly, and it's just like you go back at all these things. It's like, oh yeah, let's just stick to our bread and butter, and we'll be just fine with this. But it's been an interesting piece. I try not to take anything personally because you're getting attacked from every side. You're not going to make everybody happy. I'm doing the best I can. My team's doing the best they can. I'm going to create the best environment for my people to succeed. And hell, if they want to criticize me for that, then it's just going to happen. So if it took it personally, I'd be, my therapist would see me twice a week instead of once a week.
Okay, so we're going to get into sprint car racing kind of now. And obviously Highlimmit, I don't know if I call it a split so much. I kind of look at this thing a little differently because I sit around all day and think about it. That's either extremely sad or it's my job, or both. But because a lot of their guys don't run a full-time series. So that being said, there's a lot of chatter about Highlimmit. There has been over the last year. Yet you retained a big bulk of your roster. You lost basically 2 guys. Casey Kane, he kind of was on and off. You got to feel good in that you were able to keep a lot of heavy hitters. You just signed Buddy Kofoid, who I think is a star in the making. You have Gio Salzi. You guys did the Sports Center type thing. I thought that was great. You got to be pleased that you were able to keep the bulk of that roster intact.
Yeah, no, that's again from we've done what we said we were going to do. We're doing it for the right reason. We've got the right relationship with the racetracks. We've got the relationship. The guys, you lost Brad, you lost Spencer, and I'm not so certain where Chad's interest is going to be this year anyway. For Spencer and Brad makes sense. I mean, he's the owner of the other series, so
Right.
in my mind, you retain people and you keep the relationships because you have a good relationship, and you really are trying to provide, and you are providing what you said you were going to provide. We can't change we want to make it better. Again, you see some of the dynamics that we're trying to introduce and we're trying to recreate in sprint car racing through our own vertical integration, through our resources, and trying to create not only a brand for us, but a brand for the race teams that choose to take advantage of those things, and for our marketing partners with Moss and Case and with Milton Hershey Schools and Hoosier and VP and all other 100 of them. You're trying to create the best you can do, and you trying to create an environment that makes their businesses better, makes their brands better, and all of our teams but one did that. They believe that we're still doing that, and that's my job. So I don't see this as a split. I see this as they're creating an opportunity around us. They're creating an opportunity on our coattail. I firmly believe that, because we've grown awareness, we've grown opportunity. And if I create opportunity for somebody that I can't take advantage of, then somebody else can take advantage of it. But don't try to do it to my detriment. And I don't think they really, honestly and sincerely are. But I just want to make sure I understand what the impact is before I start making radical changes to my business. Because right now, what we have been doing for the last 20 years seems to be working, and it seems to be entertaining a lot of race fans, and more race fans this year than last year. And that's what my job is. So I'm going to continue to do that. And my team is going to continue to do that in the way we think is best for the industry and best for the sport. And if somebody else can fit inside here, that's great. If they want to start taking stuff, then we'll start fighting back. I don't see that really. I don't know yet, though. But we're going to do what we're doing right now. We're keeping our racetracks, make sure we do our job. Keeping our race fans, make sure we do our job. Keeping our race teams, make sure we do our job. And then we're going to carve out whatever is ours, and that's going to be great by me. And I think it should be spectacular for the race fans and great for everybody else involved.
One of the things that has come under fire is the exclusivity. I see both sides of it. I understand what you say. I understand what a driver might say, or a team says, or what Brad says, or whatever. Explain your view on the exclusivity and why that is such a staple of the world of outlaws, whether it's a track, whether it's the team, the 4 races. Now, you did give in to the 4 races, obviously. Explain why that is so important to what you guys do.
Well, it's something that we compensate the teams for. So again, if I want to start making radical changes, what do? I looked over at the other screen. Last year across the company, we paid 1.2 million in tow money and 3.4 million in points funds, and those are based on the way we've been doing it is exclusivity. So it's not just the sprint cars, but across the board. So that's the whole piece. But
right,
our model has been to create an exclusive product. It's what our fans, it's what our promoters pay for. It's what we promote, and that's what has worked for us to date. That's why we've got to keep a very careful eye on this, on how this has an effect, so that I'm planning 5-10 years from now, what do we need to do to maintain our position as the leaders in the sport and the leaders in promotion and the leaders in streaming and all of those pieces? How do we continue to maintain those pieces and grow them in the way that the fans ultimately want to experience this? And right now, they want to be guaranteed the roster. And it's not a driver, it is a roster. It is an accumulation of the best in the business, the greatest show on dirt. And that's what I'm trying to navigate and candidly evolve into what the sport wants, what the fans want, what the drivers and teams want. This balancing act I've talked about for a long, long time, and getting that to work. And exclusivity has been a significant component of that way before my time. Ted did this long time ago.
Ted was rough.
I'm sorry?
Ted was rough.
Ted did it. That was his guys. And I think in 2003, there were 4 full-time teams. So something we're doing is right. We just continue to do it for the right reasons. And I think we're going to be I know we're going to be just fine. Considering the hills we've climbed before. I'm excited as I can be about 2024 with what we're doing with some of our. We got some a great roster of drivers on the sprint car side, the late model side, the big all aspects. Some are nationals with the way we've evolved that piece on all aspects of. I know we're getting a little bit further away from sprint car racing, but there's a lot of things that are happening in a very positive way. The viewership is up across the board, and there's no doubt that Flo's working on that, and we're working on that, and we're all hopefully there's fruits for all of us to bear. My job is to make sure we have the best product and we deliver what we promise.
Little tough here. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Hey, Tom, can you shut that door? Can you shut the door?
Little tougher here. What do you say to people who say, okay, all right, you can't race someplace else on say a Tuesday, and because you have a race on Friday or whatever it is, but there's that thought that, oh, that takes people out of the stands Friday, but we don't know that because it's never really been an option way back to Ted and everything else. What do you say to the person say is there's no proof of that it hurts the Friday track or whatever? Or is that a track thing when you sign on with them, they kind of request that?
No, I think that our model's been so familiar to our track promoters, they understand that it's a significant component to a Friday track. And candidly, Friday race is harder to sell than a Saturday show. So the Fridays are the ones that are the most critical of not having anything on Wednesday or Thursday in the marketplace. Saturdays are pretty easy. And no, none of the promotion of any of our shows, none of them are easy, but Saturday is definitely easier than Friday, especially if we're going around. You're right. There's no proof, but that a Tuesday night hurts us. But and the question for me is, do I believe that a Tuesday night is a sustainable model where everybody in balance is good? That model hasn't been proven either. A lot of it has come and gone. Candidly, are the Tuesday night shows that are not focused completely on a TV show, do they make sense to the promoter? Some of them do, some of them don't. Are we promoting them on a sustainable way? In my mind, that's the question that needs to be answered, because everything I hear every time these doors drop, it costs them a lot of money. So really racing more isn't the idea. So we need to make sure we focus our finances on a particular spot. The fans aren't near as flexible on a Tuesday as they are on a Friday or Saturday. That's kind of proven. And some will travel, some won't. So there's a lot of unknown. We were focusing on going from 90 races down to 80 races, and now we're trying to go back to there's 130 races available to everybody. There's going to be some fallout there too. We don't really know until we see what two national sprint car touring series looks like. On the late model side, it's been ebb and flow 20 years, and things come and go, and not everything is great. And then you have people come in and insert things that aren't sustainable, and it becomes really hard to manage. So we already have evidence of some of those things working and some of them really not working, candidly, and being about as broken as they've been in a while. So it's a dynamic that I'm, again, focused on what we do good, do it well, stick, and then make sure that we're evolving and get to the point where it makes sense for everybody. And right now, our fans want, as particular our customers on Friday night, which meaning the track promoters and the fans, they want to know that they're getting the show.
Do you worry? You mentioned late model racing, and yeah, you had a third party come in, and you said about things good, some things bad. Is that kind of why you don't really want sprint car racing to be like late model racing, and why it can't be like late model racing? That, and there's just not as many cars.
Well, there's all of those dynamics. There's a lot of dynamics going on in late model racing. I was one of the first. And maybe this was a mistake too. I tried to make them a lot alike 3 or 4 years ago. I made the late model purse the same as the sprint car purse, which really wasn't ready for that. And then everybody stepped. It changed the purses across the entire industry, which I guess I like that because it made the finances harder in some ways for some of the parties. But sprint car racing and late model racing is not the same. The dynamic across the country is not the same. The geographies are not the same. The concentration of cars is different. You have to be really careful not to do the same things. And there's some mistakes been made with some of this happening throughout the country that we need to, I'm learning from to try not to repeat them. And I hope everybody else is doing the same thing. Because some of the stuff is just not sustainable. And I am not going to build an event that is based on broadcast alone or broadcast only or promoted around one or two people. And because that's, in my mind, that's just putting anything in particularly one big risk pool that's just not acceptable to me. I want to create a grandstands full of people, and then everything else sorts itself out.
Well, also, I mean, why cut a revenue stream? If you could have two revenue streams instead of one, it just makes sense.
Exactly. I mean, you're subsidizing one with the other, so it's been late models already, the even the two models at the national touring level, there's two different models there with the Lucas Oil and running that with a marketing program for Lucas Oil. So they're taking their marketing money and spending it. So is it operating at a profit or a loss? How do you allocate marketing revenue? So we've been operating at trying to operate that business at a profit, sustainable on its own, independent of the sponsorship, bringing in resources. So there's even some challenges to whether the two national series are even running on a similar sort of business model, because as soon as Lucas Oil decides to allocate that marketing money away from dirt track racing, what happens to Lucas Oil series? So I'm trying to build it where it's a sustainable business model. And, they've been able to do that, and they've got support from the family and Forrest and his Morgan and the guys. They're been supportive, huge supporters of the industry and the sport for a long, long time. I hope that never changes, but what happens if it does?
Shifting to Dirt Vision, one of the things that's always come up, and you've addressed this a little bit, transparency on Dirt Vision numbers. And again, this is one where I understand both sides. You guys built it. You guys took all the risk. You guys put the money up. So really, you can do with it what you want. But have you even sat in your office and thought, should I share numbers or share information with the teams and drivers only? Obviously not the fans. That's none of, but almost viewing the teams as partners, even though it's about the brand. Where do you that's a balancing act. Where do you come out on that?
It's definitely been difficult. We've owned Dirt Vision since 2004. So Dirt Vision's evolution has actually been fun to follow too. And it was really the foundation for This Week on Dirt and some of the things we were doing in the Northeast. And so it really was born in pre-2004. So we've been nurturing that along the way. The hard part is that what statistics do you want? You want views, you want viewership, you want subscribers, and people come up with all these numbers and they start making things up. And then they assume that we don't reinvest 95% of that back into the sport. So it's a hard dynamic. You're going to see, and we actually are more visible with the teams on viewership and hits and impressions and all those pieces. But the idea of any of that stuff being confidential, once you let it outside the doors, is that's you can have all the agreements you want in place, but it becomes public knowledge. I see all sorts of stuff on the competitors too. So, it's a hard balance, because, the idea of having, I like to build stuff kind of in the dark, not let everybody know that, we're doing a new platform, we're doing a new, about all the technology that's coming, so you can maybe choose which camera you're watching on Dirt Vision. Some of the other things that are coming towards us in the next 12 to 18 months, very similar to like a golf coverage. It's going to be pretty cool, actually. But there's a lot of those things that takes real money to try to invest. So the idea of us pocketing, however, I've heard all sorts of numbers. If it, subscriber bases and they multiply that by 40, well, it's not all 40. It's $25 for a lot of our subscribers that are paying on an annual basis. So it's like, so pick a number, multiply by whatever. People are going to come up with it, whatever suits their narrative. For me, it's creating an awareness campaign that creates resources for the industry driven by us to grow. And for me, that's our whole vision on Dirt Vision. So it's something that we never got when we were growing up. You had to look at the newspaper, and if they weren't racing near you, you had no idea what was going on. Now you can watch it in seconds. You're watching it live. You can watch it every night you want to watch it. You can watch it. You can catch up on everybody in matters of minutes. So it's a really extraordinary time that we're living in, and being able to keep up with everything and having visibility to all that. But the idea that anybody's doing, it's a tough business. If you think anybody thinks the technology to run dirt vision costs anything less than 7 digits every time you try to do something, they're out of their mind. So it's an expensive proposition for us, but it's one that we committed to, and it's one that, I think, again, if anybody thought we were treating them unfair, we wouldn't have re-signed everybody or have a huge roster or have great track partners or do these things or try to create the relationship with the race fan. So I think it's a great balance right now. People want to know so they can create their own story and their narrative, and they're going to do that anyway, and they'll make up their own numbers if they want. So I can throw in spattered bits of fact and spattered bits, but our viewership and impressions, we do actually release to the race teams, and we actually give them a quarterly report on our platinum teams on what we're doing, and some of the new teams that we give them some information to help them come out on the road. So again, the story is evolving. Do you do it like is your viewership, your households, is it uniques, is it total views, is it multiplied by 2.5? How many people are watching each TV? I mean, it's right. Crazy. You can make it up any number you want to make it up, but the exciting part of it is more people are watching more frequently than ever, whether it be on dirt vision, on speed sport or flow, whatever it is. We've got more awareness now, and for us, we have to drive that into long-term race fans. If we do that, we're going to be just fine.
Across the board, whether it's dirt vision, rules, penalties, so on and so forth. Do you, and I know you're evolving, and I talked to you, on and off the record before about stuff, and do you feel like there's times you guys need to be more transparent than you are with certain things, whether it be penalties, rules? I know some of it's HR stuff in the state of North Carolina. You got to be careful with that. I know everybody wants to know, why you didn't fire an official for whatever happened at Beaver Dam. But I mean, that's a human resource issue in North Carolina. You could be liable for that. But just more transparency in general. Sometimes the Outlaws, I mean, I've criticized it at times over the years. Do you think you need to do that in some regard better than you had before, just to ingratiate yourself to fans and other people more?
Yeah, it's a hard one. You can't generalize. Some things you want to be very visible with. The competition side, we try to be very transparent. HR stuff, I mean, HR pieces, employment pieces, that's just not fair because of our arena. We are very, very, everybody's aware, way more aware than they would be in any other industry. So it's a difficult task. People know exactly when somebody leaves, and exactly, it's like, guys, how about the 10 people that I hired? How about you don't know anything about the upgrades? I mean, how we've replaced all those people. And so it's like, you just kind of let the narrative flow. We're not going to get into a dialogue on things that aren't relevant to growing the business or making our product better. It just doesn't work. And then also managing the news and a journalism portion of our business, it's a difficult balance to, do you want to go show the fighting that's happening in the pit area, but you're also having to officiate. So we're going to show it on TV, but they're going to penalize you both of you. So it's like, it's hard. It's a difficult balance, growing a business and maintaining the integrity of the sport. And we want both. Sometimes they don't agree. Sometimes they conflict a lot, because that, hell, if it wasn't for, there's lots of races built on fighting, lots of races built on that spectacular, the sort of some of the spectacle of that. It's that craziness that gets people engaged. How do you push on that a little bit? But there's some things that, and you look back over time, nobody's perfect. We make officiating mistakes. We try to own up to those. We try to do the pieces, do the best you can in a hostile environment or a high duress environment. Everybody's going to make mistakes, and we try to own up to those. We try to do that. And most of that stuff, I tell my people that we don't need to air out family. The racers and everybody is like, we don't need to air this out in public. Sometimes you do. Sometimes the public wants that. It's just, but you far from generalizing any of it. Every time it's different.
Won't keep you too much longer. Highlimmit's different. Their model's a little different. I mean, obviously doing some things different. And my experience in sports, because I've covered some professional sports and obviously college, high school, and everything. You're the bigger brand, obviously. I've been around since 1978. I think everybody would agree with that. I've seen brands before take things from another league or another company or whatever and use it in their own. Do you ever see yourself changing how you do things, how you do your model, uh, whether it's revenue share, whether it's number of races? Do you ever see yourself maybe incorporating some of those things or being forced kind of to make a change to your business strategy or how you guys do things?
Well, the business is constantly evolving, so that's the first answer. So we're constantly changing. One of the I hate, well, we were doing it this way because we did it this way last year. No, that's not how we do stuff. So I'm
Right.
trying. So we're constantly evolving the business. Um, I hope to never be in a situation where I'm forced to change anything. I don't think anybody's forced to. You have to make a decision. You have to make decisions based on your environment. So I don't agree necessarily with the word forced either. So there's situations. I mean, competition makes you hone your decision making skills. That's my philosophy. So if you have competition, hone your decision making, and make sure you focus on what you're trying to achieve and the right way to do it. And that's what we will do. I don't know what sprint car racing looks like 10 years from now. My job is to make sure that the World of Outlaws is still the premier series and the pinnacle of sprint car racing, and that we're doing everything we can to make sure that sprint car racing is bigger 10 years from now than it is now. And if I do that, and not just sprint car racing, when I say that for this, but it's for everything. And if I've done that, then I will have done my job. Do I expect it to be different? Absolutely, will be different. I have no idea what it looks like. I just want to make sure that we continue to keep our race fans going and continue to keep the teams in a place where their business models work and where the fans know what they're getting. We don't confuse a bunch of race fans as to who's going to be there, what's going to get, what it's going to look like. And then we continue to put the best team together from a company perspective so that we can continue to evolve it and change to the needs of the customer, and we're going to be fine. So do I expect it to change? Absolutely. Do I expect to be forced into a situation? I surely don't expect to. We just continue to make decisions and try to balance it all in. This thing is hard. It's not an easy balance. You're trying to generate revenue because you're going to buy 3 new trucks and trailers this year. You're trying to generate because you want to increase prize money. You want to increase the amount of money that everybody's making. You want to keep your staff. You want to grow at the same time. You want to make sure that you're implementing all the technologies that people want to experience on their phones and in their laptops and on their TVs and their smart TVs and all the rest. And at the same time, you want to just have a little fun and entertain some people. That's my job.
So, so Brad, obviously, I don't want to say, I don't know if you're mad or not, but I do know I've talked to you, and look, it was sore. I mean, look, he was one of your guys. You helped him build Brad Sweet into the best driver in the sport right now. The World of Outlaws allowed that to happen. Obviously, start a competitive other series, you're going to have some angst toward that. Let's be honest. You're the governing body in this sport. I've often said one thing the World of Outlaws is that no one else is in this sport in the United States is a governing body. Do you ever see yourself working with Brad and Highlimmit? I don't want to say burying the hatchet, so to speak, but do you ever see something where you can work together or where it's a civil working partnership for whether it's the betterment of the sport as a governing body for rules or tires or anything like that?
So I see no place for anger in managing a business. So that's the first fundamental piece for me. So anger doesn't come into it when I start making decisions and I'm angry and things don't go that well. And I
Right.
know
It's
that.
more of a personal.
Exactly. And then from that perspective, anything that's to preserve the integrity of the sport or the longevity of the sport, they've already been included. So like our Sprint Car Safety Council meeting, they had representatives there. We organized that meeting. We invited them. So yes, that part, there's none of that. As it relates to the rest of it, then we're going to have to sort that out. But as it relates to protecting the integrity of the sport, the longevity of the sport, risk mitigation, safety, all of those things that could significantly limit the ability to grow the sport or continue to race. I mean, risk mitigation, safety rules, those things, they're included. They're going to be included. That's an important part. That's, again, balancing the integrity of the sport or the business. Sometimes they conflict. For us, that's an important part. They've been included in those meetings. They're going to be included because they have people that that have an effect on a lot of races now that we are not going to have an effect on. And that's important for us all to work together. Has been, we've been doing it with USAC and ASCS and All Stars, and now we Highlimmit's in there, and they've been involved in the pieces that associate with that. As it relates to the rest of the business, we're going to continue, we're going to continue to do our thing. We're going to continue to do our thing. Does it give me, is it aggravating? Yes, but anger doesn't get into my decision-making process. If it does, then I've got to go see my therapist again.
3 times in a week instead of
No. I'm not even on once a week right now. It's all good.
So last thing about state of racing, then I want to ask you about your driving duties.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about weekly racing. The reason
Yeah.
I'm concerned about weekly racing is because obviously I'm in the biggest weekly racing area in the country, in central Pennsylvania. I see the weekly model where you're running 34 races at a track is not working. With 2 national series, while I think 2 national series can work, I am very skeptical if the current model of weekly racing, especially in central Pennsylvania where each track's running 30 races, I don't think that can work anymore from a financial standpoint. But are you concerned about weekly racing in all areas of the country? I know we've talked about the regional end of it. Where do you sit on weekly racing, and do you kind of maybe feel a different model needs to be put in place in these different regions?
Well, generalizing weekly racing is really hard because each geography is different. What I'm afraid we're going to see, if we learn from some things that have happened on the super late model side, the super late model weekly racing has been one of the losses that we've had with the big national series and the other series. The idea of hosting a weekly super late model show is really difficult. So we've already sort of seen the first casualty with the All Stars and the regional program. I don't know what FAST is going to do to step that up. I know that we're participating some in a speed week to try to fill the gap. But so I think that the dynamic in weekly racing at the 410 level, that dynamic is changing, and each one's different. You can't generalize what 410 racing is in Southern California versus Ohio or in Iowa or in Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, Eastern or Western, so generalizing those pieces is really hard to do. I think that what you're going to see is that the people that are good at it are going to continue to excel, and the stuff that's marginal is at real risk. And especially if there's an idea that we can support 2 high-paying shows for 410 racing on the same weekend in different geographies, then that's going to pull from more local racing, weekly racing on a regular basis, and that's going to hurt somewhere. And I don't think the sport's going to be. I'm worried about that. I think that we have to preserve some of the things that are important to us: the MOA, IRA, Power I, some of the other pieces. Some of these things you're going to have to watch out for them, because we need as a fan base, as a sport, need those healthy so that we can have them when the national tour comes by and we're not watching 14 cars race. We're watching 28 to 32 or 40 cars race. And I just want to make sure we're managing that dynamic. It's a tough one. Weekly racing it's hard. It's not like it was when we were growing up.
No.
There's now soccer's not a Sunday afternoon sport. It's an annual sport, and baseball's an annual sport, and gymnastics and everything's an annual sport now. It's like, so we're competing with everything. It's something we got to watch very carefully as an industry.
So you race a pro stock 602 late model. Is that a chance? First off, why do you do it? Secondly,
I love it.
Is it a diversion? Is it like your therapy, so to speak, just to get in a car, forget about if you can turn it off? I know I can't watch a football game anymore and not think about what I'd write about, because I used to do that. But can you turn it off and just kind of have fun with it? Is that kind of a release for you?
That's really what it is for me. I raced an IMCA stock car back in Texas a long time ago. I raced in Smiley Sitton's Sprint Series of Texas 305s back in, I think she got Rookie of the Year, believe it or not. Kind of craziness back in 2006, I think. just for the hell of it, because I grew up as a race fan, and I'm not a great, I'm not even sure I'm a good race car driver. I like to protect my stuff because it's all my stuff, and I don't believe they're going to run for a $5 spot in a 305 race and even bend a radius rod. So to do it, so to pass the next guy. So it's been kind of fun. I'm competitive in nature, but for me, it's a way to introduce fun back at the racetrack because it's become a lot of work. And for me, it's an avenue back to having a little bit of fun at the racetrack. So my guys know that when I'm in my race car, you know, the good thing is the business, I'm kind of jumping around here, but the business doesn't rely on me day to day to be at the racetrack. I have great relationships, but I've got an incredible staff that does this for me. So really the opportunity was created to race in that because of the staff I've created and the relationships and then really the infrastructure here at World Racing Group. So they've allowed me the opportunity to actually race in some of the things. So I'm going to race in Volusia next week, my 602 late model, and just go out and have some fun. And candidly, that's what it is. It's an avenue for me to have some fun and just to remain grounded in the sport. It's expensive to run these race cars. I know that nobody out there is really making any money at it at that level, and they're out there because they want to be out there and they want to have fun and they want to be competitive with a group of guys that are like-minded. And that's the kind of stuff that keeps me grounded in it. So yes, I run a 602 late model at Volusia, and I'll be at the back of the field somewhere having fun. And in my pro stock in the Northeast, I have flashes of competitiveness, and I can have a little fun there too, but it creates relationships with the racetrack. They kind of have fun when I'm out there. My officials, they love to razz me on the radio, different things. It's fun for me. And I won some sprint car races this year as an owner too. So my 305 is still running around here with Jake McLean running it. So it's kind of fun just to watch all this stuff happen. It's fun for me.
Do they have an office pool on you? That's the real question. Do your employees have an office pool? Do they do they
No, but I shocked the crap out of them when I qualified second at Super Dirt Week. Like, what the hell happened to Carter? You just qualified second at Super Dirt Week. It's like, give me that slick track all day long. I'll pedal that car around. Give me a hammer down track. I stop.
well, you don't spend as much stuff theoretically on
A
slick.
slick track, I can pedal those cars. I grew up in Texas, black dirt at Kennedale, at Kennedale and Heart of Texas Speedway. That black stuff gets slick. Give me a track I can pedal around. I'm pretty good at it. Give me a hard hammer down track. I suck.
Just go to New York and Ohio, baby. You'll be set up.
Slick. Give me something slick. I'll drive it. So,
well, Brian, I want to thank you for your time. Obviously, it's a pleasure to have you on the first edition of the Deep Dive. Obviously, again, thank you for being candid and obviously your time. I know you're a busy guy.
well, I appreciate it. Thank you for spreading the word. And I look forward to seeing all those race fans. If you see me at the track, come by and say hello. I'm just one of you guys. I'm a fan at heart and there to have a good time with you. So thank you guys. Thank everyone for being involved in sprint car racing.
That's going to wrap up the SprintCarUnlimited.com deep dive presented by EnTrust IT Solutions. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page. Check out the 90 at 9 every day at 9 a.m. Also, check out SprintCarUnlimited.com for exclusive content for only $35. We have weekly podcasts, breaking news, anything you'd want to know in sprint car racing. And we'll be back next Thursday with another show. Stay tuned.